You're listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast.
You're listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast. My name is Sean Wilkie, and along with my awesome co-host, we interview the innovators in this space every week. Ivan, please kick us off.
Hey, I'm Zach, and I'm excited to introduce Luke Hedlund. Luke is the founder of Tucannon Partners. He's looking for a single business to manage and make a majority investment in. He helped run a medtech business that focused on vet clinics prior to this adventure. His grandfather was a vet, so it's always been close to home. Luke worked at an investment firm before business school, received his MBA from Berkeley and EA in biology from Whitman College. Luke, welcome to the show. Thank you for finding the time.
Thanks, guys. It's great to be here.
So I think this is the first guest that's coming in with no business, looking for business. I think it's kind of cool. So I'm intrigued to have this conversation. Tell us about it. Like, what are you trying to do and how does that look like? Do you just call businesses that you see in that minutes and say, hey, do you want me to run your business? How does that work?
Yeah, it's a different path of entrepreneurship and innovation, but it's one I'm really excited about because there's a lot of great companies out there, and either the owners are of retirement age and they want to step back, or the founders have been grinding for 100 hours a week for 5+ years and they're tired. So those are kind of the two profiles of businesses that I've been targeting. And oftentimes when people are in those positions, there are some opportunities in the company that are within my wheelhouse. So especially with innovating within the business on meeting structures and just the operations of the company internally. And then also sometimes those businesses end up being a little bit sleepy or having opportunities for more innovation on the product and service. And so that's something else that I'm really excited to help solve.
That makes a ton of sense. There's lots of businesses in vet med and other industries that have been doing the same things over and over again. And they're comfortable, they're making revenue, but they're not necessarily changing anything. So help me understand how long you've been at this. How long have you been looking? And what's it look like out there in vet med? What's the opportunity landscape like? And yeah, let's start there.
Yeah, so I've been at this for about a year, and I've been touching on your earlier question. It's a lot of networking with folks and going to conferences and getting warm intros to folks who might be interested in my approach. Of course, not every company wants someone like me to come in, and not every company wants a majority investment. So the warm intros are super helpful. And then in terms of the landscape in vet med, it's always an interesting time, I think, but a couple anecdotes that I've been thinking about right now. One is that there's a lot of innovation for really small companies that are trying to attract angel funding or trying to bootstrap themselves and get off the ground. And then there's a handful of companies that have raised significant rounds of money or sold out to larger companies. And there's not a lot in between, which is, it's unique probably to vet med in a lot of ways because it is an attractive investment environment for a lot of people. And it's an oligopoly in a lot of ways. And a lot of those bigger companies in the space of IDEXs of the world are buying up the medium-sized companies that have received or seen a lot of traction with their offering. So it's almost if you picture a barbell weight, there's a lot of companies on the small end and there's a lot of companies on the big end, which is pretty interesting.
So can you unpack a little bit your approach here? Because I'm just still trying to think of Sean is running, his company Talkative for a number of years now, close to 5, Sean? And then a guy like you coming in and says, hey, Sean, I think that you would benefit from leaving and I'm going to step in and I also want to buy a majority in your company. So how are you funding it? How does the pitch go? And what is this sort of phase? You said, really loose kind of definition of it, but is it like the revenue that you're looking for in the company, profitability, scale? Like, what is your metric that you're coming in and say, yeah, I want to think about this company. This is the capital that I want to invest, and this is how I'm funding it. So if it's not a proprietary, I mean, this information.
No, it's not. It's a good question. And there were many parts to that. So let me know if I missed one of them. The pitch or what I offer to companies is for folks who want to take a step back. If Sean or a founder is burnt out or maybe they don't have the skill set to grow the business beyond where they've taken it to, then that's a good opportunity for them to maybe start another company that they've been toying with for a while and they don't have the money to do it yet, or they don't have the time to do it. Or for older business owners, maybe they want to retire and spend more time with grandkids or on the golf course or whatever. And so there's always reasons why people want to sell their business. But what I think, uniquely in a position to do is that I want to come in and help continue running the business in a very similar way and keep the employees in place and keep the momentum and success that the business has had, but bring new ideas and new innovation and try to improve the performance even further from there. And then you asked about before I move on, Ivan, does that answer that piece of that question?
It does, yeah. I'm just interested then how do you fund this and what is the model? Because, a lot of listeners could listen to it and be like, gee, I want to do that. I just want to go and offer a bunch of companies that I'll buy them. But how does this work? And maybe this is something that we haven't talked about on this podcast yet.
Yeah. So I have a handful of former entrepreneurs and mentors who have invested in me to go off and do this. So I'm spending 100% of my professional time doing this. And then those folks will also put up the acquisition capital. I'm targeting companies that have product market fit. They have real revenue. They're hopefully profitable or at least break even. And size ranging, if it's a software company, $3 million of ARR, or if it's a traditional services company, and that could be something like pet cremation or medical waste disposal, up to $100 million enterprise value business.
Very interesting. So it's almost like I don't know if you're familiar with SPAC kind of structure, the special acquisition vehicle, but it's in the person. And it's the person is you. So there's a bunch of investors that invested into the entrepreneur and they equip the entrepreneur to go and get it. I've heard of the models like this, but this is very interesting. So what do you find in our field? So you said that there's companies that are sort of in between those two. What do you find more? Are there more companies that are starting up? It looks like with the AI right now, there's a lot of momentum. And how do you filter them out quickly? Because it could be quite a lot of, and labor intense, just like any sort of venture capital or angel funds that filter through venture companies that are just not fit or not fit yet. Do you have people come to you, or this is kind of your way of, the outreach and the companies?
Yeah, there's a little bit of both, of me reaching out to folks and sharing with them what I can offer and hopefully solve a problem for them. And then some folks hear about me and they reach out to me as well. Ivan, what was the first part of that question?
What is the sort of majority of the companies in our domain specifically?
Yeah. The startups are a lot easier to find because I'm part of Vein, the Veterinary Angel Network, and they come to Vein or they're at the conferences with a booth and they're oftentimes more technologically savvy. And so those folks are easier to find. The older business owners who are of retirement age, maybe they're halfway stepped out of the business and they have a GM running the day to day. And those folks are harder to get in touch with. It's hard for me to say what the overall composition is because I have a biased view into the folks that come to the surface more easily. And then on your question about what I'm looking for, there's definitely a lot of startup founders and businesses in general who chase a big valuation and chase an exit. And I think it's a product of the vet ecosystem creating some really good businesses and being a profitable industry for a lot of companies. But it creates some challenges too, because I've seen some startups that have really smart, well-meaning founders who get distracted by chasing a valuation rather than solving a critical problem for a customer. And that's really what I'm focused on. It's who is a customer, what is their problem, and how durable of a solution is this for that problem? And if it is a durable solution for a critical problem, that gets me really excited.
That makes tons of sense, Luke. So, Luke, you've been at this for a year. We were talking before the show. You've interviewed and had conversations with about 100 companies. What's your sense? Are you going to be, going the route of an established company that needs some new energy, or is it going to be a newer company that needs to get to the next stage of their evolution?
Yeah, it's a good question. I wish I had a good answer for that. If I were to just guess based on statistics and number of conversations I've had, it would probably be a newer company that wants some fresh perspective to get to the next level. But if there's a business owner who wants to retire, who I end up connecting with, I would be really excited for that opportunity as well. So for me, it's really about what the business is doing, how they're solving the problem, and how durable that is that I'm the most focused on. And that could be a really young business or it could be a really old business too.
Makes sense. So let's do a little role playing. So you find a company, it's day one, the transaction's closed. What innovation are you taking to the company within the first 6 months of being there, running it? Maybe we'll help you identify some targets.
Yeah, I'd love that. So there's a few things that I think a lot of companies that I've seen can innovate on within their four walls. It's really around meeting structure, development plans, and just how they communicate in general. Those are, I think, three things that sometimes companies overlook or they fall into habits of, oh, sending an email out to everybody or inviting everyone to a meeting. And that wastes a ton of time and money. Meetings are very expensive, especially with executives in the room. And I think companies need to be very, very thoughtful about why they're inviting someone to a meeting and what they're trying to accomplish in that meeting. And being able to really focus on that and bring intentionality is, I think it's an innovation because it's a new way to solve an existing problem. And then the other piece I'll add is document writing, I think is very helpful. I've found it to be helpful just to collect my own thoughts, but also to memorialize a decision and then also memorialize outcome of that decision to be able to reflect if that a similar type of decision comes up in the future. There are some books or podcasters who talk about a pre-mortem and a post-mortem for making a big decision or a little decision. I think those exercises are really helpful and innovative ways to run a business.
Nice.
So what were the most exciting opportunities without naming the company? But in what space do you see that there was a potential, even though it didn't work out, but maybe, you don't want to name the companies or you have MBAs with them, but just sort of by the sector that you personally got excited when you thought that it would be great to be a part of?
I think there is some really interesting innovation in businesses within the imaging space. And that could be teleradiology companies, or there are some businesses that are, I think, changing the workflow and how pets are imaged and what the diagnostic imaging process and workflow looks like. I think diagnostic imaging give a ton of information and sometimes it's prohibitively expensive for pet owners. But as I think technology improves and maybe that cost comes down, it'll hopefully solve more problems and bring better care to pets, which is ultimately why we're in this. So that's one thing that I'm very excited about.
So, Luke, what excites you the most about joining a company in this space? Why VetMed? Yeah, I get the history, the experience, but why VetMed? Why not another industry?
Yeah, so Ivan mentioned it earlier, but I have experience helping run a business within VetMed, and my grandpa was a vet, so it's always been close to home for me. But then, bigger picture and taking a step back, what's special for me is supporting the animal-human connection. And just to illustrate that a little bit, we have a dog who we absolutely adore, and not saying our dog has ever done this, but a dog could conceivably jump onto the kitchen table, eat your dinner, and then later that day, take a dump on your carpet. And also within the same day, be licking your face. And hopefully that's not a normal day for most pet owners, but it's illustrative of how strong that animal human bond is. And that's something that's really special to me. And it's fun for me to support that for other people.
Makes a ton of sense. So, we've got quite an audience of innovators and people in vet med. I guess now's your opportunity to kind of have a little kind of soundbite with them. What are you looking for? If people out there are listening, how should they reach out to you and what's interesting?
Yeah, I think the soundbite would be, do you see an opportunity in your business that maybe you're not able to capture because you're too focused on the day to day? Or are you tired of running the business day to day and do you want to bring in fresh perspectives? And also, do you want to take some chips off the table? And if some of those things are true, all of them don't need to be, but if some of those things are, I'd love to have a conversation. I enjoy meeting people in the space and learning about different types of companies. And hopefully I can be helpful to them, even if we don't end up working together in the future. The best way to get a hold of me is either on LinkedIn or you can send me an email, Luke, Luke, at tucannonpartners.com. That's TUCANNON partners.com. And I'd love to have a conversation and try to be helpful.
Awesome. Well, the time's out. As usually it is every week, we have 2 questions that we usually ask before the end of the show. Is there book, YouTube video, TED Talk, anything that inspired you recently that you would like to share with our listeners?
There's a book called The Manager's Handbook by David Dotson. And that book talks about some of the innovating within the 4 walls of a company that I spoke about earlier. I think it's a great book for really any leader in a business. And it's one that's been impactful for me. So I highly recommend that.
Amazing. And the last question for you is another innovator that you think we should have on the podcast.
There's a friend, his name's Dr. Jeff Bloomberg, and he has a business called Veterinary Diagnostic Centers. He's innovating how the ultrasound imaging workflow happens. It's a pain, I think, for a lot of clinics and pet owners and pets to go through the traditional ultrasound process. And he has a new approach to it with in-person dedicated space for ultrasound. So he's also a very accomplished vet. He built a practice and sold that and then started this business. So he's a great guy and also a great innovator.
Thank you so much for listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast. If you want to hear about our new episodes, please follow us on any social media channel. Also, you can check out our website at veterinaryinnovationpodcast.com. See you next week.